Okay, let's move things along. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're joining us from in the world. Welcome to Unlock Queer Leadership 101, powered by We Create Space. This is all around lessons learned from my journey as an LGBTQ plus change maker. I'm delighted to be joined today by the wonderful Steph. And we're going to hear all about Steph's journey, and we're going to chat all things Queer Leadership 101. How are you doing, Steph?
Hi, Neil. I'm good. Really excited to be here today. And hi to everyone who's already popped their names and pronouns in the chat. It's a great thing to do on a Monday, isn't it? Just start the week right.
I love it. I love a good chat. Steph, before I'm going to give a little bit of a bit of grounding to unlock in a second, but do you want to just give an intro as to who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. My name is Stef Tudorascu. I use she, her pronouns. And in terms of my intersections, I'm a first generation immigrant from Romania, currently reside in the UK. I'm a queer bisexual woman, and I'm very excited to be here. My day job is field sales and marketing, so I work for an agency called CPM, but I've also been doing corporate activism for about 5, 6 years now. So, yeah, very, very excited to talk about that in a minute.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much, Stefan. Before we jumped on here, Steph and I were having a conversation around all around leadership and around how leadership looks so different and our own perceptions of what leadership means doesn't always match up with how people demonstrate leadership. So we're going to be talking a lot about that through this session. This session is for everyone, whether you envision yourself as a queer leader now or in the future, comfortability around that term queer leader. But our unlock program is all about kind of like bringing people together. It's our queer leadership network, as it says on the screen. Unlock is a community-led learning platform and network supporting queer leaders in business and life, and in communities as well. Leaders span business, they span community, activism, campaigning, loads of different things. And our vision for this is a world where all queer leaders are seen, celebrated, and equipped with the tools to thrive. We want to create spaces, as we always do at Learn, we create space for people to learn, connect, and grow and unlock their innate potential. Our network is made up of all different kinds of people, future leaders, LGBTQ plus professionals, entrepreneurs, leadership experts, all coming together to collaborate and forge paths moving forward because we're so much stronger together. Our programs look a little bit like this. We've got workshops, we've got conversations like the one today, we've got retreats, networking, resources, and more. So do check over to unlockworld.co on Instagram. And you can find us on all the We Create Space pages as well. And yeah, get involved. We've got loads of different things. Later on this week, we've got an Unlock Queer Authors journey session as well. So lots of different opportunities for people to get involved. I am just going to bring up my screen so that I can see everyone's LinkedIn messages as well, because I really want to be able to see those as they are coming through. Um, so Steph, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we obviously have only touched base fairly recently in terms of working together, and for the audience, you've already given a little bit of an intro as to who you are and what you do. And I wonder if we can jump straight in and talk about what makes you a queer leader. And I'd love to know what your comfort levels are. I know we had a chat about it before, but what your comfort levels are around that term of queer leader.
Yes, thank you. It's I love the term. I think it's really kind of empowering to be able to identify with that term, but it's not something that I really thought of in myself until recently. I think I've always used the word activist to talk about myself and the work that I do, and leadership is something that's almost been a consequence of that. So the more you operate in the space and the more you grow in the kind of scope of what you're trying to achieve grows, you have to pick up some leadership skills because people will be looking to you to give some direction or give some support. And that's where I think our conversation earlier about kind of what leadership looks like can really differ. I'm not someone who has a huge team of people under them, works an incredibly senior corporate role. I'm very much emerging in that world. But when it comes to the queer space, I feel like I can confidently lead, the people I work with, the people that kind of come up to me for advice. I can do that through my lived experience and my kind of engagements with others throughout the years, because I've put a lot of work and energy and love into the space. So while I might, I might not feel like a leader all the time, I definitely feel like a queer leader now after all of these years of work. But didn't think to describe myself as one until like last week when we started talking about the session. So it's been
Yeah.
quite a reflective journey for me in the last couple of weeks.
And how's it sitting?
Yeah, it's still a bit uncomfortable, I think.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not putting it on
same.
my CV anytime soon, but
It's an odd one, isn't it? It is quite a strange one to sit with because it's a bit like this. It's a bit like the term ally, right? It's a bit like the term ally because I'm a big believer, and allyship really comes into leadership as well. In that I will wait for someone to call me an ally before I self-proclaim it. And actually, I feel it's a little bit the same with leadership, right?
yes, and I think there's an element of kind of like imposter syndrome.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think there's always someone described this to me once as you don't always need to prove yourself so hard because I feel like I'm always working. I've kind of set myself to this like the standard, and I'm always working to that. And it can come across a bit overbearing sometimes for people because I'm always like, no, I need to prove that I can be in this space. But actually, sometimes you don't. Sometimes your actions will do that for you, and you don't have to let that like little voice in the back of your head win. You can just accept that what you've done is enough and that you are doing a great job. And you can embrace a term like a queer leader without cringing on the inside. But it takes a lot of time to like just accept that in yourself.
For sure. You in your setup for how you identify as a queer leader, there you said two things that really jumped out at me. And that was firstly that you're emerging into that. And I think that's really, really beautiful in terms of that emerging, kind of like you can recognize where you're going and you can see what you're doing. And then you said that you pour a lot of energy, but also love into what you do. How important has that been in terms of recognizing that having love and passion and energy for what you do is crucial right now?
I think it's the only thing that's kept me going sometimes.
Okay.
I think we can all feel that the general feeling in this kind of D&I space that we operate in is dwindled in some places, or people who are more performative allies have taken a step back now because they don't feel like they have to continue to perform. And that put us in a good place to empower people to actually continue to learn and get educated and engage with the work that we do. But it also can put us in a really difficult place because there are barriers coming up now that we would have not had 3 years ago.
Yes.
Um, so I think having that love and that passion for what you do is what's going to keep you going, but it can also help you stand out. Doing this is not my day job. I don't get paid to do any of this unless I work with We Create Space, which is great. But in my, in most of the work that I've done in my weekends and evenings because I'm passionate and I want to see a change for people. And I think that comes across really well to the people who engage with the work that you do because they can see it comes from a genuine place.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and it's needed. Heart is needed right now in terms of what we do, particularly because things are so challenging. Um, corporate activism, corporate activism is something that gets a bad press sometimes, right? In terms of kind of it not being seen enough as pinkwashing and stuff. Where do you sit on terms of kind of like community activism and corporate activism and the lessons that you've kind of like maybe brought together from both angles?
Um, I think corporate activism for me, for a while when I first started, was almost the only thing that I felt like I could do because there was a lot of, when you think about money and time and kind of what you can do when you're young and you're trying to pay your rent, um, rather than going and volunteering for a local community charity, you might end up just picking up a second job because that's what you have to do to get going, right?
Yeah.
So, corporate activism for me at the beginning was almost like a safe way of engaging with this type of work without jeopardizing being able to pay my rent. But what I've noticed kind of growing into that space and seeing it change so much over the years is that there are a lot of examples of people trying to do something and call it corporate activism when it doesn't actually serve the community. But
Yeah.
by continuing to do work in the corporate activism space that actually is for the people, comes from people who have experienced all of the different negative experiences that we've had and the kind of lack of support that we can have as a community, that's where it can be really powerful. And it can be, as simple as having the right policies in place in a business and making sure someone's protected if they're trans, or if someone is harassed for their sexuality or their gender at work. Just having that kind of backbone in the business to make sure that you know where you can go and you know you're going to be supported is more than just a tick box exercise. It's actually saving people's jobs and lives and continuing to protect queer people in the workplace. And that's how I see it. I see it as having to work within the system to create protections and allowances for us to continue to exist as our most authentic selves. Because if we don't do it, no one's going to do it for us, especially now. So I think it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking up and speaking out and moving from, I think moving into advocacy, knowing when to stand behind people, knowing when to stand next to them, and knowing when to stand in front of them from that protection piece, and ensuring that those around you are able to thrive. I can feel how much love and energy you bring into it, and I know through your work that you do. How would you define your leadership style in 3 words?
um, I would say vulnerable, um, lighthearted, which I know is kind of opposite, but there is an element of kind of lightheartedness to what I do, and kind of high energy. 2 words, but they put them
Yeah,
together.
you can have them. You can have it. That's all good. I love that. Um, Speak to you about the vulnerability and lightheartedness, because I actually really understand that, because I think that so much of when you're talking about not just lived experience but lived expertise as well, you do need to be a little bit vulnerable. Firstly, you need to step into a little bit of discomfort with it, but also I think that it when communicating people, bringing people along, there is often this, we think that it needs to be really serious and heavy, particularly in DEI, but actually, light-hearted sometimes does the trick.
Yeah, I think from my experience, it's been what's engaged a lot of people who wouldn't have otherwise engaged with the content or the conversation. That vulnerability piece for me is almost like I don't have a choice because I'm open to a fault. I've had the privilege to be able to be very open and vocal with my experiences and my lived experience, both at work and in my personal life. Almost, I say that I'm not out to everyone in my family, but they don't speak English, so it's fine. But outside of that kind of like family area, I've been able to, since moving to the UK, be really open. And that's come with a lot of vulnerability, but I don't know how to be in any other way. So there's not really a choice for me. That just kind of is what it is. The lightheartedness and the kind of bringing humor into these conversations is something that is a bit of a coping mechanism in a way, because it also allows me to control how the conversation's going and I'm not getting that weird like pity look that people sometimes give you when you're just trying to tell them an experience and you're not looking for pity, you're just looking for someone to listen. So it gives you control of a conversation, being able to bring humor into this. But there's also that element of like your audience will understand that it's okay to just relax.
Yeah.
A lot of very vulnerable and personal stories and anecdotes can make people on edge because they don't know what to say and they don't want to say the wrong thing. And it's that whole like terrified ally who wants to help but probably ends up doing the wrong thing anyways because they're not comfortable enough to just relax and have a conversation. And by bringing humor into it, then they can go, okay, like I know it's serious, but it is just an experience of another person. We can just talk about it like face value without getting in our heads about it.
Mhm.
And I think it's helped a lot. It really helps tackle difficult conversations. And then you can get more serious and you can get more in depth and you can talk about, how some things are systemic and how some things you can't just fix through a conversation. But it's that gateway drug into just getting into the conversation and feeling comfortable to have it in the first place.
Yes. Yeah, it's like a gateway, right? You can like just like ease people in. Yeah, and I think that, I do think that the light-hearted touch sometimes can break through a lot of the fear that people feel about voicing their own experiences. Liz has just shared Liz has shared in the chat box, as an out trans woman, passion and my experiences are the two main factors that keep me motivated to keep doing what I do, especially in the wake of what's been happening in the UK. I think passion and passion and love and channeling where our strengths are. They're definitely so important. In the spirit of being vulnerable, I'd love to know, is there a current challenge that you're experiencing when it comes to your own development that you're happy to share?
Yeah, I mean, we talked briefly about how the general feeling in the D&I space has changed a lot. And it's really interesting because I feel like my professional career outside of just, what I do in the queer space, I'm doing pretty well. I'm not really worried about my development. I feel like I've got people who champion me. I've got good mentors. I feel quite safe and protected in that space. But when it comes to the queer leadership side, in the last year and a half, I feel like there's been a real shift from not just kind of me working in a business, but also like looking at the clients that we work with and the kind of brands that we engage with, and the experiences and work of other people who do similar things to me. There's been a lot more red tape, a lot more restriction, a lot less opportunity, a lot less budgets. It feels like everything's almost like scaling back. Um, and there's a part of me that feels like it's fine because when I started, I had no budget and no corporate structure, and I kind of scrapped something together that became like an official structure. But in reality, I am now in a world where official structures exist and there's policy and there's um, processes and approvals and things in place that aren't necessarily helping us do this and make things better for our communities. And it feels more like a fight than now more than ever, to be able to have a voice in that space, to be taken seriously, to be given the time and the people's ears to kind of speak into. Because before I felt like I could do anything. If I had an idea and I wanted it done, I could turn it around in a couple of weeks and it was there. Whereas now there are people getting involved in some of the execution that have no idea what we're trying to do and don't really get the cause, but are there just to make sure things are looking a certain way or communicate in a certain way. And I think I don't want to call it censorship because that's a really big word, but there's an element of that where you feel like the authentic experience is not always allowed to come through in the same way that it would have been a couple of years ago, out of fear, out of not wanting to upset a certain brand, a certain person, a certain political figure, right? Like there's that bit of fear that I think wasn't there before. So that's been quite interesting to navigate, I think, in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know many people are navigating that. It's a new world. It's a new world that we're facing, and I think that we, within that, we there's a recognition that some things need to change, and it is about being creative and innovative in how we approach it. You mentioned mentorship there, and obviously, in terms of kind of stepping into our own as leaders, role models, mentors, reverse mentoring, all of that is so important in terms of kind of how we take the steps forward about how we self-reflect and put things into action. And I wonder, how have you approached mentorship, perhaps with finding a mentor and maintaining a relationship, both on a relationship sense, but also a practical sense of making that happen?
I've got, we could do another half an hour just on mentorship. I'm very, very passionate about this. Um, so quickly touching on reverse mentoring, because you mentioned that as well. Before I talk about like the people who've mentored me, I actually got into the kind of whole idea of mentorship. I had some informal mentors a few years ago, but it was never like something that we did and we took seriously. It was just more like people I look up to and like kind of sought advice from, and sometimes that's kind of how it starts. But I had the opportunity to do this amazing program with the IGD on reverse mentoring. And I got to reverse mentor people from different businesses who wanted to learn about D&I and different aspects of it. And it was amazing. It made me realize, again, talking about acknowledging your kind of queer leadership potential and all of that lovely stuff. It kind of makes you realize how much you can offer and how much you can help others, and being able to be paired up with people from another business, people who are on the board for other businesses and make really big decisions, is really powerful because you can speak freely. It's not going to have any repercussions on your job. You're literally just there to help, and they're coming to you to understand that experience. So I think reverse mentoring for anyone who is either a senior leader and wants to understand the space more, or anyone who is thinking about becoming a reverse mentor, absolutely something to engage with in whatever way you can, because it helps both people a lot. and it gives you a really good understanding of that like dynamic and kind of what you've got to offer, and again what you can learn from others. So yeah, reverse mentoring is great. I recommend it to anyone who's in a senior position in any job. I think everyone should do it. And in terms of me having mentors, as I said, I had some people, and there's some people in my life still now who, have managed me or I've kind of worked with for a period of time, and I always kind of reach out to for advice in different spaces. But there was also a time where I wanted a mentor specifically in the D&I space, and I knew that within my business that I couldn't get that. So I spoke to someone in the business for some advice, kind of who could I could reach out to. And Amy Burke from the AGD was recommended to me as a person to reach out to, and she runs the reverse mentoring program. So I kind of knew her through that already. And I just dropped her an email and I said, hey, I know this is out of nowhere, but I really want to do more in this space. I would love to get some insight from you, and I really admire what you've done with your career. I'd love to like do something similar. And she was great. She took me on straight away. we
So
started
cool.
we started doing like little Zoom sessions because geographically we were quite far away from each other. We did meet up for a coffee once, which was really nice. And we did it for a few months, and then she got really busy, so we kind of had to take a break from that. But we still bump into each other at events, and we drop each other the odd LinkedIn message here and there. So having that perspective of someone who isn't in my world and doesn't do my day job and actually is just mentoring me in that kind of D&I space was really, really important, because she got me to see things from a perspective that I would have never considered had I just stayed within the CPM world. So yeah, don't feel like your mentor has to be like your manager or someone senior in your business, because you might not have any role models that look like you, think like you, have had your experiences in your business. Seek them out somewhere else. There's loads of great people out there. So yeah.
Yeah, two great tips there. Firstly is think outside the box, but also just be bold and ask people. And I always say this with working in DEI particular spaces, and but also on a general level, right? People are so generous on the whole. I know we don't think they are in this day and age, but actually people do genuinely want to help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. I've never gone to someone and asked them for help and been refused or like treated badly. It's always people will make time and they will find time, and even if they don't give you help exactly in the way that you thought they might, they will find something that works for you both, and give you that little bit of themselves, because people do want to help,
Yeah.
and they want to support others, everyone. And it feels great to see someone come to you and ask you, hey, could you help me with this? And it's only going to take 10 minutes of your time, and you give them that 10 minutes, and it means the world to them, and they can achieve beautiful, amazing things afterwards. So I think we all know we would do it for each other. So just bear that in mind next time you ask someone for help. They'll probably be very excited to help you.
That is a beautiful segue onto the next one, and that is kind of like, what does giving back to the community look and feel like to you? You've just talked about how it means the world to people when they give to you, but what does giving back look and feel like to you as someone that's showing up in the way that you do?
Um, I think it sometimes it feels like it keeps me sane. I don't think any of us were built to work corporate jobs. I don't think anyone would like, as a kid one day goes, oh, I want to do emails all day for my job. And it's, that's an oversimplification of what we do. But realistically, no one kind of wants to grow up and have a corporate career, really. You have way more ambitious ideas when you're a kid. And then it becomes a reality for a lot of us. And actually, we end up in corporate jobs that we like, and that's great. It's a really big privilege to do a job that you genuinely enjoy. But there's still an element, I think, for me at least, where I feel like I love what I do and I love the people I work with and the impact that we can have in our work. But the work that I do in the queer space, it means 10 times more to me.
Yeah.
And it feels like it's very personal, because when I grew up in Romania, like people being bisexual wasn't really a thing. It was always assumed. They just kind of made it up, and never really knew anyone queer growing up. I was the only queer person in my small town. Um, I was the first person in my family to go to university. There was a lot of like first that I had to go through, and I had no role modeling really. I didn't really know anyone who has been through what I've been through or came from where I came from and did the things that I was starting to get into and start doing. And being able to provide that role modeling for others now really helps me kind of reassure myself that I've done the right thing and I'm on the right path, and it's a great personal motivator. But it's also 10 times better when you have a small interaction with someone, and then you go see them go do great things, and seeing that development in people and that growth in people, sometimes through my impact, sometimes through something that I had nothing to do with. I've just kind of happened to be in the same space with them, and I've noticed that happen for them. That really, that's giving back on steroids for me, because you see someone flourish and finally accept themselves and be authentic and kind of run with the wind and do what brings them joy. That is what brings the most joy for me. So being able to implement some systems and some policies and some open some gates and some doors for people to be able to be themselves and do that and grow and flourish, that's what is the most important to me. And I think that's what I do because I want to see other people grow.
Yeah, I love that. We asked you to choose three practical takeaways for people from our considerations and under the banner of well-being, inclusion, and leadership. And I wonder if you could take me through those quickly, if that's okay.
Yes. Hard to choose just three because all 10 of them are amazing.
Yeah.
But I think the first one that I feel like I've been working on the most since I've started doing this type of work is approaching things with intersectionality in mind. It's so easy when you start getting into the D&I space to hyper focus on one area that you feel like you're more comfortable with, or only fight for one part of your community because you feel like that's where you're the expert. But actually, there's so much to everyone's lived experience, and no one is ever just in one box. We're all beautifully complex human beings. So understanding intersectionality and actively working to bringing that into every project that you do, every bit of work that you do, is going to be so much more impactful, because more people are going to be able to relate, and it will actually be more genuine and authentic because we are all a bunch of different things mixed up together. So you can't just focus on one because you'll miss out the bigger picture. Um, so that's one. Then the conversation about transparency and communication, to me, is something that, and not just in kind of queer work, but generally at work, is something that I've found to be so powerful. Because when you're transparent with people and you kind of bring them on the journey with you, you'll always have a much more engaged audience, a much more engaged group of people who understand what you're working towards, and they work towards it together. And that's even your friendship group. If you talk to your friends about what you're going through and what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve, they will bear that in mind next time they plan a party on a weekend that wasn't convenient to you, because they know what that means to you, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's just that consideration, and people won't be able to consider your feelings if you don't tell them what your feelings or your thoughts are. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Ties back into the vulnerability piece as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the diverse representation piece, obviously touched on this a little bit now when I was talking about not really having any role modeling growing up. I think that's where it kind of boils down to for me, because if you can see it, you can be it, right? There's that kind of age-old thing where if everyone you see doing a certain job looks a certain way, it sounds a certain way, it's very difficult for you to believe that you can do that naturally. But if you see diverse people doing the diversity of jobs, then it's much easier for you to like imagine yourself doing those jobs. And that's the same with everything. It's spaces that you exist in, it's the people you engage with, it's the way you kind of carry yourself.
Thank you so much for those. Liz has come in, not with a question, but Liz shares that they're trying to get reverse mentoring off the ground in the NHS. It seemed to be an impossible task, especially when the speciality in question was all things trans related,
Mhm.
which is understandable. Any tips on how to influence people in higher positions on reverse mentoring?
Um, that's an ongoing battle, actually, that I've been a part of in the last few months. And I think there's different ways you can do this. Obviously, I've never worked in the public sector, so take this with a pinch of salt. But there's an element of sometimes with people in the very high senior positions, you have to assume that they're really busy and they're chasing a number, a target, something, right? Generally, it's a number, but a goal or a target is often being chased. So the best way to engage with them is by providing them with something that is a solution to a problem they have.
Mm,
Now we know that reverse mentoring is a great solution for many a problem, but finding who exactly you're targeting in that senior position leadership, because it's normally one person or a couple of people who make that decision, right? It's not like a big ambiguous group. So find who you're targeting and engage with that person directly, and then help them understand how what you're proposing is going to help them achieve their goal. Because once you've got that buy-in from that person, then they will approach the conversation differently. Because at the moment, a lot of people just see it as like another initiative that they need to do as a tick box.
Yeah.
They don't understand the value. So if you can translate that value into something tangible for them, that is what I think is going to give you a kind of better engagement with like that senior stakeholdering relationship.
Yeah, definitely. I think within DI we talk a lot about the need to identify sponsors, whether that's an executive sponsor that you can get on side, but also using the tools that are available to help you how you present this idea as a solution. I'm just thinking through to feedback surveys, pulse surveys, that sort of thing, and kind of like what is it that you can harness that's being done internally already to showcase the need for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And try to look at other places that have done it successfully in
Yeah.
a similar sector, right? Because you might find some private healthcare providers that do a similar thing. So reach out to those connections and try to understand what other people are doing. Because if you can show them that their competitor is doing it and it's doing it better, they're again more likely to respond back. Um,
For
Sorry,
sure.
this is very sales language. You can tell
No,
can tell
you're
my
good.
sales, but
I find that the lessons from these conversations transfer across so many different industries. My final question is this. This has flown by the way. I could talk to you all
yeah.
afternoon. But is there a lesson that you've learned along the way that you'd like to impart to those listening today when it comes to either encouragement or a little bit of your wisdom?
Um, I always finish a lot of the kind of speaking engagements that I do with this note, but I think it's really important that we continue to lead with empathy in everything we do.
Mm,
It's very simple, but actually, a lot of the big, complicated problems and challenges that we are facing as minority groups, kind of trying to make our way into the world, would be solved if more people had more empathy and were willing to listen and understand. I've yet to find someone who, after understanding and kind of taking an empathetic approach, won't be more empathy or more sympathetic to a cause, right? Like if you understand where the people who are suffering are coming from and why their suffering is the way it is and how that manifests for them, you will automatically be more likely to be a supporter of that cause. And I don't mean to oversimplify it because it is a very complex problem for a lot of people. But as an individual, if you're going to take one thing away, just try to understand other people's perspectives and lead with more empathy because I think that's going to make the world a better place.
absolutely. It's such a fundamental part. When we think about leaders, we often think about the drivenness, the high demand, the success, the status, and actually we overlook some of the more fundamental elements and empathy is one of them. Yeah. Steph, thank you so much for the way that you show up as a queer leader in your own unique way. I've loved speaking to you. And how can people keep in touch with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn, just my name.
Yeah.
I should come up. There's not that many people with my name out there. And that's kind of where I do a lot of my work. So if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best place to do it. Drop me a message. Let's hang out if you're ever in the Milton Keynes, London area. I'm always keen to hear more from people who are in this space and kind of learn from each other because I think we can only move forward as a community. So connect with me, drop me a message, let's chat.
Thank you so much, Steph. Lovely to see you, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.
Lovely. Thanks, Neil. Bye.
Bye.